From the beautiful city of Los Angeles, California, we bring you the Gimme 3 podcast. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Gimme 3 podcast, a series for cinephiles. And today we are again joined by Max Sopkin, and we are discussing movie musicals, even more movie musicals. And we've been chatting some good ones, a lot of ones that old Nick hadn't seen. And now we're going to see another one that I hadn't seen. So Bella, take us into our fifth film of the day.
Yeah, so my third and final choice for this episode, I had to choose Annie. And sorry, guys, it's not the Cameron Diaz version, but the 1982
I think I watched
Carol
the
Burnett
wrong one
version.
then. I was kidding.
I was like, no. This is, again, I've realized that all my choices today have been like childhood classics for me, but I grew up watching this, singing it, did a little Annie play when I was like 5. So obviously I loved this
Were
film.
you Annie?
No, I wasn't Annie. I think I might have been Duffy. So I just said, oh my goodness, over and over and over again. It's their only line.
Great character.
But yeah, so I adored it as a child, and I honestly still adore it today. Even though it is a little bit of a different experience watching it as an adult now. The film follows a 10-year-old little orphan Annie who's constantly trying to escape the horrors of the orphanage run by an abusive, alcoholic, completely delusional woman, Miss Hannigan. One day, Annie is invited to live with Oliver Warbucks, the #1 billionaire Wall Street tycoon, for 1 week, just 1 week, as some form of charity. And over time, everyone at the Warbucks estate comes to adore Annie, including Mr. Warbucks himself, who eventually plans to officially adopt Annie. Of course, these plans are halted when Annie tells Mr. Warbucks that she believes her parents are still out there and she would love to be reunited with them. So he offers to help by putting an ad in the paper for a $50,000 reward to reunite Annie with her birth parents. Naturally, this hefty reward lures the cockroaches out of the woodwork, including evil Miss Hannigan, her convict brother Rooster, and his suspicious girlfriend Lily St. Regis. And the three of them devise a devilish plan to get that reward at any cost. So I'll turn it over to you guys because I'm really curious what you guys thought of this film.
I'm so glad that you picked this one because this was one I almost picked.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Good.
Definitely was on my short list. It was very hard not to pick this one because this is one of those movies that we watched, my sisters and I, again, dozens and dozens of times.
Yeah, it has a lot of rewatch value.
There's a lot of rewatch value. Here's how I think of Annie in one. Now watching it again as an adult. Okay, this is what I think.
Yeah.
As a kid, you identify with Annie and the orphans, and you're like, wow, you're so tough. I want to be like you. As an adult, you identify with Miss Hannigan.
Where's Annie?
She had to go bathroom.
And you're like, get these fucking brats out of my way. And you're like, leaping lizards. And you're just like mocking the kid. Okay, that's how you know you've made the trend, and you're trying to like just drink gin in the bathtub, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That's
oh
how
my God.
you know you've made the transition from kid into adult. So I finally just realized that.
By the way, that's how I felt about the last 9 films that we've talked about with all these British dirty children all around. I was like, get these goddamn kids out of the way. Give me some more Poppins, for God's sakes. Nobody wants to see these fucking kids.
Too many blonde kids singing
Fucking
right
shit.
now. Yes, so that's Carol Burnett this is maybe a part that could not have been more better designed for the person playing in terms of like perfect casting. There are some roles that you think of that like, are perfect for them. This is she's so good in this. But
it's such a physical performance.
Yes, yeah. She's like stumbling all over and like the eyes and her. She's just
She's
absolutely
a convincing drunk.
Yes. She is remarkable in this film.
Yeah.
She far and away, in my opinion, exceeds everybody else and the general quality of this movie. Like, she outshines every single aspect of this film. So, like, she's unbelievable.
And you know, Miss Hannigan may be a See You Next Tuesday, but she's so stylish in this movie too, which I love.
And not irredeemable. Like, in the end, she says, like, I don't want to kill Annie. I just want $50,000.
Right.
You know, like, she's
she's not a monster. Yeah.
You know, she's
not a monster like her brother, who's genuinely a beast,
Rooster,
like actually terrifying.
She's just an alcoholic and a horny one at that.
Yeah, someone who just wants to be loved. I love that like aspect of her when like the kids are talking about her and they're like, nobody loves me, making fun of her. That's so classic.
She's great. I told my wife I was going to teach Felicity, my daughter, how to yell Punjab. That's my goal. That's my goal in the next like month is just teach her how to yell Punjab at the top of her lungs, like Daddy Warbucks did. Does it 50 times in this movie.
Punjab! Remove this animal and its young mistress along with it.
I have a lot of thoughts about this movie. In fact, this is the one I think I was looking most forward to talking about. Crazy enough.
Oh my god, I'm excited.
I have a lot of thoughts. Yeah. Nick, do you want to go before me, or do you want me to talk?
I'll tell you this. I mean, I will say straight up, of the 4 films that I had not seen before, all of them kids' films, Annie was far and away my favorite. Far and
so happy
away.
To hear this.
Like,
really,
in my opinion, the music was awesome, and it starts you off with 2 numbers, like from the jump. You know, you get the opening song with Annie singing about, you know, out there somewhere. I'm sorry, I don't know the names of the song.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Great. And then, you know, like you see the girls there, and they're just. And you got little Duffy saying, "Oh my goodness," because her heart's just, you know, thinking about it. Oh my God, I was hooked. I was in love with these kids. I was like, come on, let's get these kids some pair. Now these are some kids I can get behind, not these fucking British brats we were looking at earlier.
Yeah, honestly.
And then it transitions right into them being a physically abused.
Right, and then it goes right into It's a Hard Enough Life. I was like, come on, this is a absolute banging first 10 minutes of a film.
It is.
And
it is, yeah.
It sucks you right in. And then, you know, John Huston, love him or hate him, he is a spectacular director. He is, you know, one of the American greats in terms of, you know, filmmaking. So you see immediately from like the last few movies that we've watched, and this was the last movie I watched of all the ones I hadn't seen. And you just see how much sharper he is as a filmmaker. Like, he is far more aggressive and ambitious with the camera. He knows where to put it. That's just like spicier. And the way he moves the camera, and granted, he's not doing like 2D animation being, you know, overlapped with live action, which I'm sure restricts some of what you can do with the camera. But in a lot of the films that we watched earlier, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, Mary Poppins, what was the other one? Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. The camera is most of the time at eye level or like at chest level. It never like goes low. It never goes high. It's just kind of like they're shooting it. And the camera, much like it did with Singing in the Rain, is really dancing with the choreography in this film. So I just found this to be, you know, granted it has its flaws or some moments where you're like, but in terms of like an enjoyable experience, if I had to choose right now to rewatch one of these 4 immediately right now, I'd pick Annie. Easily.
Sure.
Me too. Yeah. It was the one where like I was trying to write down like a top 3 like songs for each one, and I was like, I can't.
So many good ones.
I love every single song in this movie.
Agreed. Agreed. From Easy Street to Tomorrow. I mean,
Dude.
Tomorrow is like probably one of the top 10 written for Broadway, right? Like
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
the all-time greatest Broadway songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But then there's also like You're Never Fully Dressed Without a Smile, which is like, come on, like such a banger.
IODENT.
and it's
IODENT.
you know, like the some of the films we talked about today, we've kind of mentioned like some of them are always a little long. You know, like there's some fat here that
Yeah, yeah.
it feels like there's no fat in this movie, even to the point where there are background artists making jokes in this. Like there's no wasted moments. Like Annie's running away at some point, and we pass by some background artists like selling something, and she goes capiche or capash. You know, it's like little jokes like where
Yeah. He's like Maroon.
It's like there's no wasted moments.
It's so awesome.
Okay, I'm like, here's this is what we were talking about in terms of adaptations of source material. I'm so conflicted about this movie as an adaptation because it is by far the least faithful to its source material.
Oh.
And it was the most recent in terms of its adaptation to its source material. So like, yeah, it's based on the comics, sure. The musical itself is only semi-faithful to the comics, but then the movie is only semi-faithful to the musical, which was still running on Broadway in its original run when this movie came out. And, excuse me, it's very different. Like, the scene, Let's Go to the Movies, does not exist in the play. Sure. That's a song called NYC. And I think truly the biggest difference is the ending. Completely different. And the much diminished role of FDR in the movie, who plays a very large part in the play.
Oh, interesting.
So if you're wondering, why is FDR in this movie? Because he for some reason they just show up in a helicopter to the White House to sing a song with FDR and then to bounce out. And then he's at her, you know, bat mitzvah at the end or whatever. It's because in the play, FDR is like the hero, right? Like he helps to lead this charge to find her parents, but then he is also spearheading the New Deal.
Right.
And in the end, everybody sings A New Deal for Christmas. And the play itself is it's a really fascinating kind of thumb in the eye of the original creator of Annie, who himself was like hardcore Republican, hated FDR. He loved capitalism. He was just like a ruthless neoliberal. And when the musical was adapted, they made FDR kind of the hero, and we're all kind of like, damn you, Herbert Hoover, right? Like, you've done nothing for us. And now FDR comes in with a New Deal for Christmas, and we're all going to be saved. And so that's kind of what I love about the musical. And then the movie completely erases all of that again.
It's got whiffs of it, but it doesn't. A New Deal song would have been dope.
What New Deal would have been dope, because what this does is just reinstall capitalism as like the end all be all of ways of living. And given that the time period that this came out is like Ronald Reagan is in the office, and the Cold War is at its absolute like peak. It's such a fascinating, again, to like look at a movie in the time period that it's made. It's so interesting to tear apart the original musical, which was done during Jimmy Carter's administration, and repiece it together as kind of like an anti-socialism message for the early 80s. I just think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think it goes into anti-social? Because there are moments where, what's his name? What's this rich guy's name? Banks.
Daddy Warbucks.
Daddy Warbucks. Name's fucking Warbanks. How could I forget?
Warbucks.
Warbucks. Yeah.
Even better.
Warbucks. You know, Warbucks is kind of like having these moments of realization, like, oh man, maybe money isn't everything, and I guess it's in a very Hollywood way, but
it's a Hollywood way of looking at it. But the play compared to the movie, there is no doubt it's not an anti-socialist message, let's say, in the movie, but it removes any socialism at all.
Sure.
You know, right? It completely removes the idea of it. And in fact, you know, she's in an orphanage, and she's like, you see all the sewing machines in there. You know, these kids are being used for their labor instead of being in school, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, why the real hero, Daddy Warbucks, would have been like, yo, why don't I pay for all these kids to go to school in the city of New York?
Right.
$1 billion. You know how far that goes in 1933 or whenever this takes place?
Dude,
like,
yeah, that was crazy. It's like when when they're visiting the president, he's like, well, I kind of thought you would run this like program for the future. And he's like,
fuck
huh?
That's
Me? With what money?
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what's happening right now?
So,
and then he's like, not you, I want Annie to run it. And I'm like, oh, okay, what are we doing now?
He's just trolling. He's trolling.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one thing I want to talk about. Another thing I want to talk about is the omission of NYC as a song, and in favor of putting in "Let's Go to the Movies," because I think this is also such an interesting, odd choice that in the play, Annie's never really been around New York, right? And so Grace and Daddy Warbucks are like, girl, we're taking you out on the town. And then what do? They stand downstage and they just sing NYC. And then like, but because we're in a play, we don't see anything. Right. We're all just envisioning it together.
Yeah.
Then they decide to make a movie where they could film on location they could go to Central Park. The Empire State Building would have just been finished not even a decade before this movie takes place. It would have, it was a marvel. It was the tallest building in New York. It was just a marvel. They could go to the Empire State Building. They could have gone to the Statue of Liberty and Central Park and the Battery and all these other amazing places. And then instead, they decide to film in a soundstage in Burbank a song about making movies, which again, I intellectually, I understand why they did this, because movie musicals had just become a thing at the time when this movie takes place, right? Like Gold Diggers of 1932 comes out a year before this movie takes place. Talkies only exist 5 years before this. Annie's never been to a movie theater,
right. Yeah.
And so you can go to Radio City Music Hall and have the Rockettes dance before the movie and stage a large Busby Berkeley, show before this movie and then show Camille. But like, I understand why that choice was made, but emotionally I disagree with it. Just because if you're making a movie, what would I prefer to see? I think it's New York. I think like, especially because you can film on location. Why not?
Right.
A helicopter shot of the three of them on the platform at Empire State Buildings, the helicopter, dollies around them, and we get this great, how amazingly visual would that be versus the Rockette dancing?
And they had the means to do it. You got her climbing up a giant bridge with the helicopter shot at the end.
That scene is insane.
I know. This was a very expensive movie at the time it was made, and it grossed like almost double what it cost. I think it was like I think it would cost like 30 or million, and it grossed just shy of 60. So like it didn't make money. Like they claimed it was not a money way to make it.
Right.
But, like just go for it. Just go for it. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. Well, go ahead, Bella.
Fair, yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think that makes so much sense. But for me, Let's Go to the Movies was like such a formative scene for me as a kid. Like I was like, that is the movie theater. That is like the theater experience.
Sure.
And And I also had no idea what was going on with like the little movie intermission when I was little. I was like, wait, what is this movie? Like, is it real? Is it not? Because it like all went over my head. So that was really cool to see, like being an adult now.
It's a real movie. The woman who is the supervising editor of Camille was the supervising editor of Annie 50 years later.
It's insane.
Yes.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Real film.
So I honestly, I love that scene, but I totally get what you're saying. And I think that an exploration of like New York City would have been really cool to see.
Yeah, it would have made a lot more sense, and it probably would have just opened up the film a little bit more, because as for a film, movie, musical, especially compared to the other ones that we watched, it is kind of small in its scope. You know, we're mostly at Warbucks' mansion, and we're mostly at the shitty orphanage, and we don't really go outside of those two locations that much. So it's like, what the fuck did you spend that $30 million on?
It's a great question.
It's a really good question.
Dale Hennessy was the art and production designer of this movie, and it was his last film. He died halfway through making it. And then when the movie came out, he was nominated for an Oscar, and then Warner Brothers changed the backlot street that the orphanage is on to honor him. So it's called Hennessy Street. And I know this because I used to give tours on it every day. But that's meant to honor him. But it's still a backlot.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like despite how incredibly detailed and lifelike it feels, it's still a backlot.
Right.
And here's my other connection to this movie, where Daddy Warbucks' mansion is at Monmouth University in New Jersey. And that's where my sister went to school. And I actually went and visited it, and I was like danced on the steps, and I was like, "This is Daddy Warbucks' house." And they teach English class in the basement where the pool is. They drain the pool and cover it up.
No way.
They just put chairs and tables out there, and they teach English.
Shelby
class.
went there, Beth.
That's
Shelby.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, and so they were filming on location in New Jersey. Which is why I was like, all the more reason to be like, you're literally 30 minutes from the city. You couldn't like get a few night shots out here of New York, and come on, bro, just take a jaunt over there.
John Huston was old at this moment. He was probably too tired. He's like, we'll go on location. Fuck that.
I gotta go home to my bed. I gotta sleep in my bed.
We are going to shoot into this mansion. Where's my cigar? God damn it.
This is just John Huston from Chinatown. Is that what you're doing?
That's him, right? Isn't he?
That is him. I think you're right. That is him. So yes, I love this movie, and I'm really glad that you picked it, Bella, because despite its flaws, it is still incredibly endearing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it has a great like climax as well. It's fucking crazy, actually.
It's very crazy.
It gets really, really intense, really, really fast.
Punjab, get the helicopter.
Yeah, we were dying. I made my brother watch it with me against his will. He's not a musical fan, and he was just like, "Oh my god!" When like the little orphans overhear Miss Hannigan and Rooster's plan, and he's like, "We'll dump the kid in the river," and they're just like, "Oh my god!" Like these people are evil.
Hey, $50,000 at the height of the Great Depression. I think you think there's a lot of child
you
murder.
would kill. Yeah, you'd kill for it.
Yeah. It was wild.
And then he punches his sister at the bottom of that bridge. Let her like, God damn. Now we see why she's a boozer, you know?
Well, and like that's the scene too where like that is genuinely so scary as a kid and even still as an adult, because you're like, damn, if Miss Hannigan is like concerned for Annie's well-being in this situation, this might get really
well, and he got out of prison. Like, you know, he got out of prison. They say he got out of prison earlier in the film. So you're like, all right, this guy means business.
Bad news, yeah.
Nick, what did you think of Tim Curry in this movie? Were you expecting to see him?
I wasn't. I wasn't expecting to see a lot of these great players. When the opening credits were going, when the opening credits were going, I was like, oh, fucking hey, let's go. That was the other thing. That was like just the opening credits sequence I was in already. So
yeah, it's so cute with the locket.
yeah, but yeah. So I mean, you know me, I'll watch Tim Curry shave his pubes and
Do anything. Yeah, he was so good in this. He's like, he scared the shit out of me as a kid in this movie.
I love when they come to the door and he's got the fake mustache over his real mustache.
Such a great detail.
Like giant mustache.
Very funny joke.
She's like, "Oh, Rooster, it's you."
So good. Oh, it's so awesome. And yeah, Easy Street with the 3 icons in this movie is just like what an exceptional scene.
Carol Burnett putting her foot through the wall on the staircase while the other two of them continue to dance away. Had Emily and I almost in tears. We were laughing so hard. And that's when Emily was like, she even said, she was like, wow, Carol Burnett's very physical in this movie.
Yeah, she is.
Man, she's the best.
She goes all out for it. It's pretty awesome.
Was the Carol Burnett show on television at this moment when this came out?
I think it had ended. I think it had ended already. I think it ends in like 77, 78.
Oh, wow. That early, huh?
Dick Van Dyke was actually a member of the Carol Burnett show towards the end. So I want to say it ends right before this.
Gotcha.
Wow, we've got a lot of crossovers in this episode.
A lot in this episode.
Well, I warned the audience that there would be a lot of Dick and Dyke. Don't say I didn't warn you.
Very true. Do you know Eileen Quinn? Another interesting fact. Eileen Quinn, who plays Annie, eventually became a professor of theater at Monmouth University, where this movie was filmed. Wild.
I couldn't believe that she. I mean, she did. I think she just did theater after this, but I was kind of shocked that this was like her only movie.
I think she mostly went on to do theater
because she was so amazing.
Yes,
like could not think of a better Annie, to be honest.
Do you know who played Annie in the original run of Broadway? Not the first Annie, but one of the Annies. Sarah Jessica Parker.
No way.
Played Annie in the original run. She took over in like 1979, 1980, something like that.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I was going to ask real quick before we move to the other film. You talked about the changes in the adaptation, Max. Did you see the other Annie that came out? Was it like a decade or so ago? And how did that compare to the original musical?
I've seen all the Annies, and any Annie that's out there, I've seen it. I have this actually. Annie was my first Broadway play I ever saw with Nell Carter in the role of Miss Hannigan. I did see the Annie with Victor Garber and Audrey McDonald and Kathy Bates. That's the TV one. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty faithful adaptation. That's a pretty good one if you're looking for like a faithful adaptation. I did see the one with Cameron Diaz and it was Jamie Foxx and Evan Solly Wallace. And it's not great. It's kind of, you're kind of like, I don't know who this was for or why. Like why the updating necessarily. And it made a lot of money at the box office, but I was kind of like, also Cameron Diaz, like not a singer. Like why?
Weird, really, really weird to me to cast her as she's Miss Hannigan, right?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand that at all. But I also didn't watch it. So
not enough songs in my opinion. Whereas like, I think maybe it's, if you're a casual, like layman musical goer, you don't want that many songs, but the songs are the best part in my opinion. Like, it's why you're watching a musical.
Especially because the music's so good in this one.
Yeah. And when you have somebody as musically gifted as Jamie Foxx, you want somebody like who's going to match that.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't it. And then what was it? Like 2 years ago, they just did on NBC like a live version of Annie that had Harry Connick Jr. As Daddy Warbucks with like the worst bald cap I've ever seen. Is the worst bald cap. He had like, the hot dog neck.
Oh, geez. Yep.
Like a pack of hot dogs. And I was
just lazy.
Like, why couldn't Daddy Warbucks just have hair? Who Okay.
That's a really good question.
His hair is not as important as Annie's red hair. You have to have that because it's the logo of the show, right?
Yeah.
Literally, you have to have that. Daddy Warbucks can look like whoever you want him to. It doesn't matter. Harry Connick Jr. has a gorgeous head of hair. He's a gorgeous man. Let the man have his hair. I was so distracted by his bald cap and his hair. And that adaptation's fine. It's not the best one. That's the most faithful is the one with Victor Garber and Audrey McDonald. That's the best one. In case you're wondering.
Let's check it out. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
But for this version, my friends, if you want to check out Annie, the 1982 version, you could check it out on Netflix, the OG streaming platform.
Hello, I'm Sonia, and this is my Movie Minute. Today I was thinking about the time I rewrote The Sound of Music. One afternoon I was talking to my cousin Seth, and it came up that he had never seen The Sound of Music and didn't even know what it was about. So I started telling him the story of Maria and the Von Trapp family. Well, Maria, played by Julie Andrews, is a mischievous young nun in training sent to nanny for Baron Von Trapp and his 7 children. The children are young and filled with curiosity, but the Baron, who's high up in the Austrian military and a widower, is pretty severe and dour. Maria easily wins the kids over with her music, her humor, and her love, and she slowly warms the Baron's icy resolve, and despite Maria's impending nundom, they fall in love. At this point in my telling, I could see that Seth was fully invested in the story, so I went on. So Maria and the Baron are madly in love, and they're forming a strong family bond. But unfortunately, World War II is escalating, and the Austrians have joined the Nazis. The Baron can't leave his post and has to become part of the Nazi regime. Maria tries to convince him to flee, but he's bound by duty, and now even the young sons are becoming members of the Nazi youth. So Maria has to leave the family and return to the convent, closing the door on her youth, her love, and the songs in her heart. Now, if you've seen The Sound of Music, then you know that I did a very cruel thing. If you haven't, then rest assured it has a much happier ending. I did tell Seth the real ending, eventually. Not sure if he's seen the movie yet.
All right, we are going to round it out here, Max. We have come to the finale. So bring us home with the final musical of the show.
Yes, I wanted to give a quick shout out to my runners-ups that I couldn't squeeze in here. Just really quickly. Hello, Dolly, My Fair Lady, Sound of Music, Crybaby, the John Waters movie, which I absolutely love, Aladdin, the animated version. And Schmigadoon, which I really wanted to talk to. I really talked to Nick about this. I really wanted to talk about Schmigadoon, but it's a TV show and it's on Apple TV Plus. So, but if you were looking, that easily would have been my number 2 pick on this was Schmigadoon. So definitely check that out if you're a musical lover like myself. But my final movie that I picked today, Little Shop of Horrors. I love this this adaptation, directed by Frank Oz, starring Rick Moranis and Ellen Greene, 1986. This is an adaptation of the musical by the same name, which was based on the Roger Corman movie, filmed in 5 days and $30,000 in the 1950s.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very funny. And the plot, if you've never seen it, is about Seymour, who's a schmuck, and he lives in the basement of a failing flower shop, and he's in love with the girl who works there, Audrey, and she's dating a terrible masochistic dentist. And one day Seymour discovers a plant that only can eat human blood, and he has to feed the plant. And as it grows, it gains him popularity and fame at the expense of his humility and his fingers. And it's kind of goes crazy from there.
Yes, indeed.
I truly love this movie. Out of all the shows, this one has to me like the deepest meaning. That the plant represents his greed, his human greed, right? It's like it's the need to constantly feed it, and the fact that you have to feed it with blood and human flesh, and it just constantly wants more, and it never stops, and it's all consuming. I love that. I think it really comes across in this version too, except for the ending, which we will talk about in a little bit, because talk about adaptations, we have to talk about the ending of this movie. But the real there's 2 stars of this, and one is the plant, of course. Like, the Frank Oz is the perfect person for this, is absolutely the perfect person to direct this movie, because it's funny and kind of dark, but also because it uses a ton of puppetry.
Very impressive puppetry. Very impressive puppetry.
Yeah.
But honestly, the real star of this movie is Ellen Greene, who is she just explodes like dynamite out of the TV, off of the screen. I mean, she is unbelievable. And I cannot picture this movie, or really any version of this show, without her. It's hard to not have her in any other version of this. She's so indelible to this.
It's an Audrey, too.
I loved her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had you seen this before, Bella?
No, this was my first time seeing this movie, so I was really, really excited to watch it. It had been on my list for a while. I loved how like campy and just weird it was. It kind of reminded me I love like Rocky Horror Picture Show, so it kind of reminded me of that. But like a less gothic version, I guess, in a way. But the music in this movie I really loved. It's Alan Menken, right?
It's Alan Menken and Howard Ashman. Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah, Alan Menken never misses. I love his work, and I love how it's like instantly recognizable as well. Like, I noticed Somewhere That's Green.
It's part of your world.
It's part of your world. Yeah.
Yes, correct. It is the blueprint for every Menken Ashman's like ballad that comes after this.
Yeah, I was like, that's literally part of your world. But I mean, I still love it. Like, I love everything he does. I think he is one of the greatest for musicals. So I was really excited about Little Shop of Horrors, seeing that.
Well, that's why I felt better about picking this rather than Aladdin, which I mean is also
love Aladdin.
Which is also Alan Menken and some of Howard Ashman's work before his death.
Another I think that children's film I haven't seen, by the way.
I'm sorry, you've never seen Aladdin?
Aladdin?
That's what I told Sonia the other day. She was like, "How have you not seen Aladdin? You're Aladdin."
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah,
it's definitely Jafar is the best Disney character by a long shot. But that's a different podcast.
Yeah. It's a bold statement.
He's my absolute number one favorite Disney character. This movie is kind of like the precursor, the progenitor of all of Alan Menken's stuff, which we are now all, I'm sure, intimately familiar with, except for Nick, who I guess has never seen Aladdin. But you've seen Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid and Lion King and Lion King.
What about Tangled?
Tangled, and
I love his work on Tangled.
Nick, had you seen this before?
I had seen this before, and I have. This was my first time watching it at home. I've only ever seen this like at midnight screenings, because it's a popular midnight film for the repertory theater crowd. And because I always watch it at midnight, which sometimes we go to midnight movie, the movie doesn't start till like 12:30 or 1 a.m. Frequently I would always like dip into sleep for about like 5 minutes here or there, just because, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
But I love it. I've always loved it. I agree. I just love the theme. I'm a big Rick Moranis stan, and there's not enough Rick Moranis art available in this world for human consumption. So I've always been a big fan of this film, and it is so rewatchable, and because it's so entertaining, like you mentioned, you kind of sometimes lose how dense and poignant it is. But it always, every rewatch that I've done, which is like, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, it offers a little bit more to me, and it offers new ideas. And I think about it and our world and our place in it and my place in it in a different way, which is an odd thing to say for a comedy musical about a eating, talking plant.
I was telling Emily my thoughts about this just last night as I was like preparing notes for this, because we saw the stage show. I've seen a few times, but we saw it last year in La Habra at just a small little theater, and the ending is so different from the movie. And in fact, Frank Oz filmed the original ending from the play, which is Bella, I don't know if you know this. The original ending is that the plant eats everybody. The Audrey 2 maims Audrey 1, and then Seymour shovels her into the plant because she doesn't want to die in vain, and so she's like, I'll help you in your journey to be successful. And then Seymour regrets his decision and jumps in after her, and the plant eats him. And then the plant procreates more plants, and then all the plants take over the entire world and eat humanity.
It's like a King Kong kind of sequence in the original ending. It's really fascinating and fun to watch.
The original ending is, Audrey 2 is like on top of the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they're singing, don't feed the plants. And so, and I was reading that Frank Oz, when they filmed the original ending and they screened it for people, audiences hated the ending. They hated it.
They were upset.
And they were upset. And what he realized is that in a play, your actors come out 3 minutes after they've been eaten, because that's the end, and they bow. And everybody's like, oh my God, they weren't dead. I'm so happy to see them again. Whereas in the movie, especially when it comes out in 1986, people are like, they're dead and they're dead forever, and I miss them. And people just didn't like the tongue-in-cheek ending. And the problem with it is that it super undercuts the message of the show, where Seymour will do anything to be popular, anything to be successful, anything to be rich, and to get Audrey to notice him, including killing her and himself dying, right? Like that is the message.
That's pretty extreme.
That human greed is extreme and can and will consume us all if we're not too careful. That is the point of the show. So it kind of undercuts the message quite a bit in the end when Seymour blows up the flower shop and the plant just dies, except for maybe it's like winking in the little flower pot at the end of the movie, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Which is a funny nod. But it is just an interesting, when you have to adapt something for your movie audience, you have to do what they want. And in this case, audiences in 1986 did not want to see the plants win. They wanted to see, again, it's Cold War. This is the height of Stallone and Schwarzenegger just kicking asses and taking names.
Yeah.
They didn't want to see the good guys lose. And I think I was telling Emily that, like, if you made this movie again today, you could make it with the remake.
Yeah.
You could definitely make it with the original ending. People would laugh.
People might like it more with the original ending now, to be honest.
Yeah, because I think people are savvier now. They get it.
Yeah.
And they're not as upset at seeing like the heroes die in the end.
Yeah.
A Game of Thrones has traumatized everybody enough.
I was going to say, I think we're all a little desensitized
but that's a good thing.
That kind of stuff. Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, it makes it real.
We can do it. You just have to like hope that your audience gets it. And in this case they didn't, but it's still a great film. Still such a fun watch.
Yeah. I have to say I was really glad that Audrey 1 didn't die.
Yes.
I was worried for her.
Nick knows that my wife Emily and I performed this song in high school at a couple different like showcases. My wife is a tall blonde and I'm a short Jew. And so like this is kind of like it really is us in a way. And so we've performed Suddenly Seymour in high school and at karaoke nights. And it's just like it's like our song.
That's a great song. I love that. Because that was one of my favorites for sure. Yes. That and like Somewhere That's Green and Downtown or whatever it's called.
Yeah, that one's awesome. Great.
I also love like shout out to the 3 women who like narrate the film.
Tisha Campbell, man.
Yeah, I love their roles in it. It kind of reminded me of like in Hercules, like the Greek goddesses throughout it, which is another amazing musical that we're not talking about today.
I think that's Alan Lincoln too. You know, the Greek chorus is still the same.
Yeah, I loved that aspect of this movie. It was really fun. And it was a great opportunity for like really fun costume design as well, which I'm always here for.
Mm-hmm. I was reading that the studio wanted Cyndi Lauper in the role of Audrey. Which, you know, she was a huge star at the time.
I could see that. Yeah.
Probably not as good of a voice.
You know, she's got a strong voice. I think she definitely doesn't, and she's kind of kitschy. It's just like not.
Yeah, I feel like she could do the like high, like squeakiness of her voice.
But she turned it down, and then you know, they talked about Barbara Streisand maybe doing the role, but Frank Oz stuck to his guns and said it's Ellen Greene or nobody, and she originated the part on Broadway.
Okay.
He's like, it's her or nothing, and the studio caved, and I mean, she is the best part of the movie. So
100%.
You know what was so funny too is like I recently, I think last week, I watched Blue Velvet. And I was just like, so I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, but there's like a villain in it that is like literally the boyfriend in this movie. Like they both wear all leather and they both like huff nitrous oxide before like torturing people. And the weirdest thing about it is that they came out the same year. So like I was just like, oh, like David Lynch must have like loved this movie. Like it's kind of similar. But then I was like, oh, that's so odd, like that they came out at the same exact time.
That's a weird coincidence. It's a really, very really
specific coincidence.
Yes.
Well, nitrous oxide was hot shit back in 1982 or whatever.
It was before
Dude,
vapes.
And the last thing I expected was Steve Martin to be the boyfriend. Like I saw, because like the opening credits, they're like guest star Steve Martin. And I was like, oh, I wonder who he'll be. Did not see that coming. That was great. Yeah. He was so funny.
Excuse me, sir, you can't go in there right now. Relax. You want some nitrous oxide? Okay, suit yourself.
And then, oh my God, Bill Murray. His scene with Bill Murray is one of my favorite parts of it. I thought that was so funny.
There's tons of little touches like in that dentist song where you see the camera perspective from the inside of the mouth.
Yes. That shot was awesome.
You know, and it's just a giant mouth and they're puppeteering the tongue and stuff, but that shot is so cool. So inventive. It's so
good.
And you know, that's like only Frank Oz could come up with something like that because he's in the puppet for most of his career, you know? So he's like, this is my perspective, you know?
Right.
So cool.
He's the only guy that thinks about the inside of the puppet, right? Yeah. That I love genius. That. I love all the puppeteering done for the plant is like They said they had to film it at like 12 to 14 frames per second.
Whoa.
And then,
Wow.
yeah, in order to get the lips to move, because the lips on the plant are perfectly in sync with the dialogue.
It freaked me out.
But it's incredible, right? Because it's a practical effect. But it's because they filmed it at 12 or 14 frames per second and then sped it up. And so the scenes where Rick Moranis and the plant and Tui are talking to each other, Rick Moranis is lip syncing really slowly.
Yeah, I was going to say that makes it even more impressive and seemingly more difficult to that they were able to get the plant so in sync. That's incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. I bought I wish I had known. I bought the Blu-ray last night from Amazon because I didn't know that the original ending for this film had been completely restored and added to the Blu-ray.
It's on YouTube, actually. You can check it out on YouTube also.
I've never seen it. So I ordered the Blu-ray to come. I mean, I just watched this movie like a couple months ago. So that's why it was like very fresh in my mind. But as soon as the Blu-ray comes, I'm going to watch it with the original ending. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited to check it out.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I love this movie. I'm glad you liked it, Bella. I'm really glad.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It had been on my list for so long because, like, I remember seeing like they had a bunch of stuff for it at like I think it was like Disneyland when I was little or something, and I never knew what it was. I always thought it was like for adults. I wasn't like allowed to be there or something. I don't know. I like made up stories about what this movie was, so it was awesome to finally get like a visual and.
It's a little morbid, you know, for little kids.
It is a little morbid.
We watched it because the music is fun, and my parents hadn't seen it since it had been out in theaters, and so they're like, "Yeah, this will be fine." No, but it's definitely very morbid. It's about murder and
I feel like it could. Yeah, I guess actually, the like axe murder scene is like that would stick in my mind as a kid for sure.
Yes.
I'd be like, whoa, this is a little intense.
I do think, there's one small bit that's changed from the play to the movie too, is that in the play, Mushnick is a lot meaner to Seymour.
I was going to say in the movie, I was really upset with what went down with him. Cause I was like, wait, what? Like he was so awesome.
Yes. In the play, Mushnick is quite a bit more cruel to Seymour, which is why his death doesn't feel it's the second death, you know? So like, in the slippery slope of things, the dentist dying, that's a given because he's an asshole. Mushnick dying, you're like, well, he's pretty mean to Seymour, but he's also kind of nice to Seymour.
Yeah.
But I guess I could go either way. And then when other people start dying is when you're like, oh, he's just gone off the rails now. He's got to feed the beast.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about that pace, you know?
Yeah.
Also, more orphans. Seymour's character is like grew up an orphan. It's like you guys picked so many orphan movies.
There's either the Sherman Brothers or orphans. That's all we got here. Yeah, Aladdin, another orphan movie. That's another one. Yeah, like.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, not just like these the movies we picked today span decades. There's orphans everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, also even when you just think about like Disney, like they're all orphans.
It's a classic
like,
Joseph Campbell trait. Yeah, I think is what it is. Right. It's the hero. It's part of the hero's journey.
Yeah. It's like the easiest way to make you root for them immediately.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Well, Max, thanks for doing this. Thank you for coming on and giving us 3 more musicals. So hope you had fun.
My pleasure. I hope people enjoyed this. I love talking about this. And I know I'll be back to talk about Barbra Streisand movies. Yes. I told Nick this is my new project. I am going to watch all of Barbra Streisand's movies in chronological order.
Wow.
And then I will do another Gimme 3 of Streisand's.
You're gonna have to narrow it down to 3 once you watch all these. That's going to be the hard part.
It's going to be really hard.
I've done 3 of 19 so far, so I've got my work cut out for me. But I will get.
So we'll see you in 2027.
Good luck.
Yeah, probably at this rate. Yeah, you're probably not.
Well, in the interim, if you want to talk even more musicals or any other, you have an open invite, Max, essentially. Anytime you want to come back.
Thank you.
And And a friendly reminder to our listeners that we do have bonus content available for a mere $5 a month. You can get access to our bonus episodes, and you could subscribe by clicking in the episode description. There's a link that says support this show. You can click that, or there's a Patreon link there as well. So please also let us know what your favorite musicals are, and let us know what you think of these. We want to hear. Leave us a comment, or you can DM us on Instagram at Gimme3Podcast. That is GIMME spell out 3 podcast. Gimme3 Podcast. Let us know what you think. And while you're there, go ahead and give us a follow. Max, why don't you tell the folks where they can find you if you want to be found?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram at Max Sopkin, MAXSOPKIN. If you want to DM me and argue with me about why My Fair Lady deserved to be on this list instead of bedknobs and broomsticks, I'll take that fight. I'm happy. I'll happily do that.
And Bella, tell the folks where they can find you on the socials.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram at Portrait of a Cinephile or on Letterboxd at BF Stratus. That's just B and then my last name, F Stratus.
And you can find me on Letterboxd with my name, Nicholas Ibarra, on Instagram at Nicholas Ibarra, and on Twitter, also known as X, at Nicholas P. Ibarra. The P stands for playful. We want to thank you all for joining us for the Gimme 3 podcast, and we will see you at the movies.